Alright, I'm back. Okay, giving this one more second? Sure. So we got two projects on the docket right now. The first one is this untitled logline about poachers, and the second one is this post-apocalyptic script. The problem with the post-apocalyptic script, and I'll post a link to it in the comments, is it begins like this. If you were covering it, it would read something like this: Kane, a badass, rides up to an old man's farm. He's looking for a girl. The old man isn't helpful, so Kane kills him. Kane meets up with a group of bandits, and they talk about bandit stuff. Meanwhile, I forget what the kid's name is, but let's call him. What was his name? Kid? If anyone remembers what that kid's name was, please tell me, because that would help me a lot. Meanwhile, Danny, it's not Danny, 18, lives with his mother. Luke, thank you. He lives with his mother. She dies, and with her dying breath, asks him to seek out his long-lost brother, Kane. And this is not the most interesting way to start a story. Now, if the author was here, I strongly suspect he would say, well, I actually was homaging Star Wars, which starts with Darth Vader and Leia on the ship before it starts with Luke on the farm. And that would be pretty good if this script did as good a job setting up the universe of the story, with the Empire and the Rebellion and the ships and the Force and all that cool stuff, as efficiently and as well as Star Wars did in its opening 10 pages. If I was reading this from sort of a more classic Pixarian, start with the ordinary world, follow the main character point of view, and a lot of times in coverage you follow the main character because there's often a lot of things going on, and you only care about what's going on from the point of view of a main character. You might do it something like this. It's a lawless, post-apocalyptic landscape, but Luke has an ordinary life with his loving mother. When she dies, she asks him to find his long-lost brother, Kane. Luke wonders where Kane could be, and then he'd want to cut to Kane doing something awesome. Because then, instead of just meeting Kane and us wondering, why the hell are we following this dipshit? Why do we like him? What's going on with all this? You actually say, hi, I'm Luke. I've just lost my brother. I wonder where he could be. I hope I can find him. And when we cut to Kane, it's an answer cut. That's what Kane is doing. And there's some built-in stakes and rooting interest because everything we learn about Kane is going to be very important to Luke, who we presumably care about. And that's good. If Star Wars were about Luke trying to find his long-lost sister, then him wondering where she could be, you might have just cut to Leia And then, oh wow, that answers that question. So this shows two things. One, the value of possibly tying rooting interest to a main character, and then using that rooting interest to motivate more rooting interest in side characters, as opposed to just starting randomly with other characters and then hoping the audience sees how they all play together. And the second thing is the value of just writing synopsises on your own work, because nobody ever does that, and they should. In a perfect world, we'd write a log line, then an outline, then a script, but oftentimes we just write a kind of a half-assed log line, then batter our way through a draft. And then when it comes to rewriting, we should probably synopsize it, creating a de facto log line. But because people really seem to hate writing treatments or synopses of their own work, they often get an incomplete one. And rather than ever seeing what's really there, they just get sort of a half-assed working. Yeah, a woman must outwit her pursuers while braving the dangers of the outback. So, with, what are we calling it? Red Morning? With Red Morning, you got the classic problem of too much first act. We learn that the woman has run afoul of kangaroo poachers. And I don't really care about that, per se, because it makes me, it raises a lot of questions. Like, it's not that I don't care about that, it's that I wonder why she was running afoul of the kangaroo poachers in the first place. For example, if she's just a backpacker out who like sees kangaroo poachers and says, "Hey, stop that," that's one thing. But if she's an eco warrior who is intentionally getting in the face of kangaroo poachers as a planned as a planned mission, then she should be willing to deal with their blowback. A woman must outwit her pursuers, but braving the dangers of the outback is better because that tells us what the movie is. I would wonder, how does she outwit her pursuers? Is this like the Most Dangerous Game, where she is qualified to do this, or did she MacGyver her way through the story, or does she come back? So the woman is an artist living in the outback. All right. So we would start with ordinary world. Artist living in outback. And I'm going to call her Jane because I don't care, but I'm sure she has a different name. Artist living in outback. Then, so we'd see that, the beauty of it. Has skills. Inciting incident. Poachers show up. Now the question is, like, you've pitched me an incredibly convoluted run of events where she blocks their car and da-da-da and da-da-da and da-da-da. And I guess you're going for Straw Dogs, where in Straw Dogs the whole point is that Dustin Hoffman is slightly complicit in the abuse that gets rained down on his head. But why is she parking her car in front of these poachers in the first place? And if I'm reading this right, debate. Cassandra tries nonviolent, legal methods to stop them, but it doesn't work. So she's driving on a road, they come to a one-lane bridge. Why does she hold them up? Is she doing this to be a passive-aggressive person? So my first question is, why does she hold them up? Like, what was she hoping to gain? What was she hoping to gain here? And also, why are we spending this much time talking about why she holds them up? Is that really what's interesting about your story? Well, if it's just circumstance, why is that in your story at all? It doesn't feel like the most necessary of choices. But I don't care what starts off the whole escalation because right now you've started a. You're more concerned with what's setting off the entire escalation than you are with uh, with what the story is once the escalation gets set off. But yeah, I mean, you're saying if it's in the original, it's written that way. Well, that if it's written that way in the original, it doesn't mean you. The point of adaptation is not to make sure the feature adaptation you're bringing in from the. Let me start that again. Your job in adapting is not to make sure the feature treatment inherits all the flaws of the source material. It's to resolve them and solve them. Well, if you're not wedded to having the synopsis, why are we still talking about it? But do you see how this? The reason why I'm sort of picking on this one to the degree that I am is you're really focused on the first act because the first act is safe, the first act is comforting. But the thing you actually like, which I think Ben generously pitched, is a woman must, or Nick D says, a woman must outwit her pursuers while braving the dangers of the outback. That's what. That's what's the interesting part is. That's what interested Ben or Nick. That's what interested you, and you reacted to that because you cared about that. Well, a better synopsis would be not just a writing prompt. I don't pretend I don't care why these poachers hate her, right? Pretend I just walked in 20 minutes into the movie, and I just know that she's under the gun. Let me ask you some logic questions. How many poachers are there? And feel free to answer these in your own time. How many poachers are there? What are the poachers armed with? Where does the story take place? And I know it's in the outback, but like what locations are available to you? Then finally, I'd want to know what do these poachers want? Because I'm not sure if it's if they want to hurt her, sexually assault her, kill her, make her go through some sort of strange Saw type chain of events. Those are all different stories. So she thinks there are two, but there are actually three. And what do they want with her? Finally, how does she kill these poachers? Why? why does it step up to kill? So, because it's pretty easy to frighten, a woman when you're two men who are lunatics with a gun. And also, if it is them stepping up to kill her, like, why is that a plot point? What are you gonna do? Like, have the first? It's not gonna be like this. She outwits them by luring them to her property after they think she's dead. All right. I mean, this is sounding like kind of a thin story, and the reason why it's sounding thin is because what I feel like is it's. I feel like this is going to be dangerously close to one. So the problem with what I'm hearing is I'm hearing a ton of ideas about why she's there and what her ordinary world is, and they're kangaroo poachers, and there's some bullshit on a bridge. But when it comes to a movie like this, there should be some interesting scenes that happen in the money part of the premise. And I know you referenced Straw Dogs, and in Straw Dogs, it's mostly build up to the siege, and the siege only happens at the end. But bear in mind, Straw Dogs is from like '71, if that. It's a very dated kind of movie. So you're saying it's dangerously close to that? Like, well, this is just a very thin movie. This is the kind of thing you could tell as a short. Um, Given that you only have two people to kill, and Cass has no one to talk to, I question what kind of scenes are going to occupy the middle of the story. A lot of writers do what I call the comb-over program, or the comb-over solution, which is they just stretch out a first act to where it covers to midpoint. So then instead of having to write 50 pages of good Act 2 stuff, they only have to write 25. But that generally leads to a boring script and doesn't give enough time to explore the concept or have the character have an arc in relation to the concept. The poacher's motivation needs to be ratcheted up. That's a good point. Like, why do they want to kill her so bad? So she's an annoying. She's annoying them. She's an eco, feminist, and they're probably conservative, conservative, regressive people. So they probably don't like her, which fine. But why did they go from not liking her to wanting to kill her this badly? In Straw Dogs, there's actually a pretty simple reason for the siege, and that reason is that Dustin Hoffman is harboring a man who's a suspected child killer, and they don't like him to begin with. So this woman vandalizes the car of three armed men. Why? I mean, what was she expecting to happen? Nick has a good point. What if she witnesses something that could screw them? That would be fine. Because right now you're setting up the female character as someone who vandalized the car of some armed crazy men. Genuinely, what was she expecting to happen? Did she think they were going to say, you know what? Having our car vandalized by a beautiful woman really made us think. We've always thought that we were in the right, that we were good people, but now we know we are not. Why did they kill her husband? Like, you're pitching this really, really sporadically, because you've, up until this point, and you've been talking about this for a long time, didn't even know she had a husband. All right, but you haven't asked a very simple question. Do why did she vandalize their car, and what was she expecting to happen? I mean, do you see how that by vandalizing the car of armed men, you can't really be surprised when they come to kick your ass? And by having Cass not know that, you risk having her seem stupid and hard for the audience to relate to. Well, that's in a fit of pique. That's childish. Like by way of example, if I were to throw a fit of pique right now, I don't think that my credibility as someone who's talking about screenplays would be helped in any way, shape, or form. Like what? All right, see, this is where the story becomes stupid. It becomes stupid the exact moment she vandalizes their car in a fit of pique. Because what was she expecting? Why is she this angry? Etc. 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 So you're interested in some. All right, sometimes people are just angry and childish. You can defend this to the death, but you've asked my opinion, and my opinion is that this is not necessarily the greatest beat for a character. Because again, what was she expecting to happen? There's a movie called Compliance, which is about the McDonald's strip search calls, and in some, it's about a guy who used to call McDonald's, convince managers their employees had been stealing, and then get the managers to strip search the employees. And even though it's based on real happenings, it's actually beat for beat from the court documents. People were walking out of it saying, "This is a bullshit movie. No one would ever do that." So your problem is you're writing a story that the audience immediately shuts off on because she seems like a stupid person who was attacking a bully and expecting them not to retaliate. And it's I don't believe that you have respect for this character, and I don't believe that this is what you believe you would do in your own world. Like, would you ever do this standard issue? You relate to this character, and just so. So you got a character who had absolutely no idea that by vandalizing the car of violent men with guns, she would be attracting hostility. who is somehow super likable that we're all on board with. Well, this is called anticipating the audience. I'll tell you a story. Um, I have a friend who's a nice guy, but kind of a classic, uh, kind of a classic engineer brain kind of person. Um, and he's one of those guys who kind of thinks he's always in the right. You know, always means well, but has trouble really seeing where he fucks up. And we got in this argument where we were talking about he's really into Asian girls. He's a white guy, and he always asks, "So where are you from?" And that usually goes wrong because most Asian American girls don't really like that question because it suggests that because we look differently, um, we deserve that question or are less American. We can argue the semantics of this all day long, but that's just how it is. Anyway, my friend is the kind of guy who likes arguing the semantics of this, and he's like, "No, I ask everyone that." And uh, I've been to China and I speak Chinese, and it's the kind of conversation I want to have. And I'm like, that may well be, but it gets you, it puts you in the bracket of insensitive people who who say dumb stuff like that. He's like, well, I'm not one of those guys. And I'm like, well, they don't know that. They're not psychic. You just gotta anticipate the perception of what something is going to when you say something that will throw off the audience. And this is a classic problem of your character is dumb, and dumb throws off the audience. And she's written in a way that is unsympathetically dumb, right? Because and I know you didn't mean to write this character as dumb, and I know you're going to tell me it's in the adaptation source material, an answer that I don't really care about. Your character is unsympathetically dumb, and you haven't justified why she's being dumb. And I feel like you're distancing yourself from this character. And if I wanted to, go even deeper, I'd say that if this was a male character, you probably wouldn't have had her do this, or you wouldn't have had him do this. Well, would a guy do this? That's my next question because I hate to bring up gender stuff because it never goes anywhere fun. But would you be sympathetic to a man who did this action, who vandalized a car without having the wherewithal to back it up with his fists if necessary? Nick D says maybe she's mistaken. Maybe she thinks it's some yuppie tourists who are always driving on her property. Turns out it's dangerous poachers. Oh fuck. Not necessarily. So again, this is sort of a waste of a character. Um, and also it's a waste of bad guys because bullies are bad. We don't like them, but you don't want to give the bully a reason to be right. If you think of real life bullies, what they're always doing is they're always sort of doing little micro hostilities, sort of pushing the line, sort of sort of edging out. It's like, oh, I'm not really touching you. I'm not really bothering you. Why'd you act out like that? You're being hysterical. See, I'm the good guy. You're the bad guy. But the way you write it, you're writing it in such a way that the main character is basically complicit in her victimization. You're saying she implicitly deserves it, and that makes me not like her as a person. And in terms of the gender politics of the script, it makes me think about a shitload of shit I don't really want to think about when I'm trying to read a cool script about survival horror in the Australian outback. I don't know if you're familiar with the Karate Kid. No, forget that. Being a human being who has an internet connection, you're probably very familiar with the Karate Kid. But a lot of people like to point out that Daniel LaRusso is really asking to get his ass kicked by the Cobra Kai. Why did she smash their headlight at all? It seems to me you're being really defensive about this point. And if you're unwilling to consider that this is a kind of a dick character, I think your problem lies there. Your character comes off as sort of dumb. And I feel like you're having trouble acknowledging that. And I don't know why. And if anyone's wondering, this is what the chat looks like, because that'll probably... Yeah, there's Nick D. There's like a lot of modern people like to point out that Daniel LaRusso is really kind of asking for it. He gets his ass kicked by a guy on the beach, and his recourse is to attack him in the bathroom stall with a hose while he's smoking weed. I think she comes off as impulsive rather than dumb. Well, I don't like this character, and I suspect that if you hadn't been writing her either, you wouldn't like her either. You've watched the show before. You know that everyone who ever sends material, um, you know that everyone who sends material, believes in their material and likes it, and there's usually flaws in the material that they don't necessarily see. Well, in this case, that flaw... In this case, that's a pretty big flaw. Okay, I think we're back. The problem with her smashing through someone's windshield, blah blah blah, is the problem with her being impulsive and angry means she seems dumb or flawed, and implicitly, yeah, that's an old school thing. There she is. She's an artist, right? What do artists do? They take pictures. Right? Great. And so they track her down. And so the most dangerous game, strangers, straw dogs ensue. So your problem with the story, as it is you spent way, way, way too much time setting up the first act, the first half, and the first half you set up is boring and talky. Ugh. So you spent too much time setting up the first act. Anyway, that's about all I got in me. I gotta go fix these tech problems and see what's going on. Thanks for bearing with me through it. I'm Matt Lazarus. This is the Story Coach Show. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can direct them to my contact, which is at thestorycoach.com.